Hello, everybody, and welcome to Music Industry Insights Worldwide. And today I have the awesome Fiona with us. Hi, Fiona, how are you?
Hi, I'm fine. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. Well, you'll have to forgive me. My voice is a little bit dodgy today, but I will do my best. But thank you so much for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure, and thank you for coming along. And I know the feeling because I'm not feeling great myself today. So get well soon, and
Well,
fingers crossed you'll be okay. Yeah, you'll be
thank you. And although, just to say, I know people probably not everyone can see this for the podcast, but you look amazing. So you certainly don't look off
Thank
off,
you.
off at all.
You put a little bit of bronzer on and you can't tell, so that's the trick.
I'm ready.
Thank you, Fiona. Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what you do?
Okay, so my name is Fiona Ross, and I wear a few different hats. I'm a musician, so I'm an artist that works in the mainly in the jazz industry. So I'm a pianist and a vocalist and a songwriter and a producer. But I'm also a journalist,
Yes.
and I'm also the founder of a not-for-profit organization called Women in Jazz Media, which is global, but I am based in London.
Oh, fantastic. So tell us a little bit more about women in jazz media, because that sounds great.
Oh, but you know what? It's the most beautiful thing. And I've got to be honest, a lot of people ask me as if I had some kind of, plan. But
Yeah.
it's quite, but to be honest, and it was, we had our 3-year anniversary in November just gone. So it's just
Wow.
over 3 years.
Okay.
And there was just a day, and it was during COVID. And I just decided there was a couple of things that had happened. And one thing was I was looking at an online publication, and this often happens,
Yeah.
where you can't find the writers or the photographers, or kind of you're reading an article and you're like, well, who wrote this?
Yeah.
And find out more information. Quite often they're hidden. And this happens all the time. But I went on this, and I won't name it because I'm not a name and shame. Um, but I went on this particular magazine, and there was a page of writers. And I was like, oh my God, this is glorious. It's actually got a page dedicated to writers. And there was
Right.
over 50 writers. And I was so excited, and there was photos of everyone. But
Yeah.
then in the same breath, as I was scrolling through these pictures, I'm like, where are the women?
Right.
Like,
Yes.
where are the women? And also, everyone's white.
Yes.
They were my instant thoughts. And I just thought, you know what, I've had enough. I've had
Um,
enough. I'm going to start a Facebook group. And I
okay.
initially just thought, you know what, I'm just going to start a Facebook page,
Yeah.
see if I can find the other female journalists.
Oh,
Um,
lovely.
and I thought, well, it's kind of women in jazz, but there's loads of fabulous organisations called Women in Jazz. But at the time, it was very specific in my head about journalism at that point.
Yes.
So I thought, oh, media, Women in Jazz Media. So I set up a Facebook page, and that was the main reason behind it. But then within a few days, I had a direct message onto that page from a writer, a journalist in China. And she's
Oh,
actually what she's in the team now.
yes.
But she messaged me and she said, oh my God, I've been looking for something like this for years. I think I'm the only woman that writes about jazz in all of China.
Oh, wow.
I know. And I was like, what? I was like, firstly, I know nothing about the jazz industry in China, but
Yes.
also what a shocking statement to make, really.
Exactly. Yeah. Look how
Um,
popular it is.
yeah, and then a few days after, I had a similar message from a journalist in Spain saying that and her words were, they hate women in Spain in jazz. That was her impression. That's
Yeah.
not me saying that, but that was her impression. And I suddenly thought, okay, do you know what? A Facebook page is probably not going to cut it.
Right.
I need to do something a little bit more serious. So
Yes.
I thought about a mission statement and thought, well, what do I actually want to do? And then I kind of reached out to some incredible women and
Oh,
and basically formed this kind of not for profit organization that's just become something very beautiful.
what a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. I wish everyone was like you in the music industry. It would definitely be a more inclusive place to be, wouldn't it?
Well, and this is my thing, and ultimately, mission statement sounds fancy, but my dream, and this is personally as well as Women in Jazz Media, I
Yeah.
just want us all to be able to do our thing.
Wouldn't that be
Like
nice?
whatever it is, you
Yeah,
know, in whatever industry, I want us all to be able to do our thing where we feel encouraged, where we feel safe, where we
yeah.
can just do our thing, which is really quite simple. But it is actually hard. So yeah, it's you know, it really is that simple to me.
Oh, thanks, Fiona. So, how long have you actively been in the music industry for?
Well, I'm a million years old. I
No,
certainly
you're
feel a
not.
million years old. But
No.
I had one of these crazy stage mums. So I've actually been working in the industry since I was about 2.
Wow.
So apparently the minute I could kind of walk and do things, I
Yeah.
was doing a lot of like modeling. And I had I've got ginger hair, but as a child I had a very specific ginger hair freckles, so it was quite kind of
Okay.
marketable in
Yeah.
certain things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my mum kind of, put me to all these auditions. So I trained in dance, drama, and music.
Lovely.
I went to stage school and I did West End and theatre and all that kind of thing. So technically, since I was 2 is actually how long I've been in the industry. So I've seen a few things.
So you've grown up in the industry, shall we say? And Fiona, did you have kind of a musical kind of upbringing as in an education, or was this all just practical experience and lived experience?
Well, I trained in dance, drama, and music, and I'm
Yeah.
a classically trained pianist.
Yeah.
And as I say, I went to stage school, so I did train in theatre. My jazz work, to be honest, I've not really trained in that. That's something I've developed and grown into
Yeah.
later in life. It's not something I studied really initially.
Yeah.
Um, but I do have kind of qualifications in a range of different things, and same with my
Okay.
education work. But I think we all just go with experience as we go
Yeah.
along, really. I'm not sure the things I learned necessarily help me now.
Sometimes they do come in useful now and again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, when you've kind of grown up in this environment and being female and being so underrepresented, how have you found that? And what kind of challenges and barriers has that brought up for you, Fiona?
Well, do you know what? I think I've been, and I talk to many people about this all the time, obviously. And I think in many respects, I've been quite fortunate in
Yeah.
that, and I do kind of credit to my mum, who was completely unstoppable and fierce. So
Yeah.
I've pretty much always been the same way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not necessarily saying that, if you're not that way, that's a problem. But,
Mhm.
I've had a few challenges, and I'll give you one example.
Yeah.
I'll give you 2 examples. So when
Yeah.
I was about 14,
Yeah.
and I was very naughty because that was back in the day when you didn't need ID. And if you put on some heels and makeup, you could get into clubs and look older than
Okay.
you
Yeah.
actually would,
Yeah.
which you obviously can't do now. But I was working in a jazz piano bar actually, and I did a lot of kind of work like that when I was kind of 13, sort of 13, 14.
Yeah.
And there was a pub kind of round the corner from this jazz bar that were doing like kind of open mic type nights. And they had a piano, and I went with a friend, and I just started playing the piano, and everyone was really lovely, and I was, singing. And the landlord, and I mean, this was a while ago, but I think he was probably in his 40s or 50s, quite
Yeah.
a large gentleman,
Yeah.
a typical kind of stereotypical pub landlord. And
Yeah.
he said, "Oh, people love you. Do you want to come and do this every week?" And I was thrilled. I
Yeah.
was like, 'cause this was like a job I'd got without
Dream
my
come true.
parents.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
was like, oh, I've done this on my own.
Yeah.
And I was very excited. And I went back the following week, and I played some songs. And at the end of the night, he said, "Oh, where are you going?" This old train station, so I'll give you a lift. Now,
Okay.
I didn't even think anything of that. And again, in my kind of innocence, and got in the car, took me to the station. And then we got to the station. And as I was about to get out, he leaned over to try and kiss me.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, well, and the thing is, looking back on it now, I probably should have
Yeah.
said something. But
Yeah.
the frame of mind I was in at the time, I was like, no, I'm not, I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
That's, and he was quite repulsive, but he looked at me and he said, "Look, if you want to work in the business, this is what you've got to do."
That's totally unacceptable.
And that stuck with me at that age,
Yeah. Yeah.
because I was like, well, do you know what? If that's the expectation, then I'm not doing this.
Yeah. I don't
Now,
blame you.
many people probably would not have been able to handle it in that way. And that's why I
Yeah.
say all credit to my mum,
Yeah.
because I was just like, not for one second. I was like, no, I don't think so. And I got out the car and I never went back.
Right.
So, I've had experiences that
Mm.
are negative, and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think many people have,
yeah.
and we all have to. We can only do what we feel is right at the time.
Right.
And I know many people who would have felt quite trapped and very kind of unsettled by that.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I just thought no, and I got out the car and I'm like, I'm not doing this.
yeah. Good on you. Is there any other experiences that you want to share with us as well?
Well, another one slightly light-hearted, which I think many women get, is as I say, I'm a musician,
Yeah,
and again, not naming and shaming, but I'm also a journalist. And there was
yeah,
a kind of colleague of mine, someone in the industry that I was quite friendly with,
yeah.
um, and he didn't realize I was a journalist. And I
Okay.
posted something on Facebook about an article, and I was just, oh, here's my latest article.
Yeah.
And the comment he put was so patronizing. And it
Mm.
was like a pat on the head. He
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, look, you write as well. Isn't that lovely?" In this really kind of patronizing. And I thought about that quite a bit, thinking, well, where did that come from?
Mm.
And I think he only knew I sang. And I think there
Okay.
were a lot of issues for singers where there's this kind of, stereotypical
Yeah, yeah,
impression of singers, which is not true. But yeah,
yeah.
that was really patronizing. And I think as women, we get that a lot. It's like
Yeah,
a pat on the head. It's, oh, look, you write as well.
yeah, yeah.
So I've had a few I mean, so many positive experience, and I'm generally a positive person, but I'm
Good.
also honest. So
Yeah.
I have experienced a lot of the negative things as much as anybody.
Well, I'm so sorry to hear that, Fiona, as well. So, how's that kind of impacted you as a person and the way you feel about yourself and obviously your career? What kind of impact has that had?
Well, I think, it's really driven me, um, but not just in my own work as far as, I am what I am.
Yeah.
And I think in particular with music, and I think this is what's sometimes quite tricky, is, if you're looking at the commercial element of music,
Mhm.
versus, I mean, see, jazz, for example, I mean, this is not kind of, it's not a huge commercial market for jazz. It's very niche.
Yes.
So a lot of people, I think, quite often don't understand jazz, but I think for me, achievement is achievement. And
Yes.
and I think, not even just music, but I really focus on, well, what is an achievement for me, and
Mhm.
what is an achievement for other people. So if your goal, for example, is to have, a number one hit that's got millions of streams on Spotify, then you go for that. And I want you to be supported and be able to do that. But equally, if singing in a pub round the corner where
Yeah,
you've got a lovely crowd of people loving your music, that is also an achievement.
of course it
So
is. Mhm.
so for me, I think, what drives me is just trying to be comfortable and confident in who I am,
Yeah.
and helping other people do the same. But
Yes,
but to be realistic, and I think COVID taught us that,
it did.
when loads of musicians, for example, you suddenly couldn't go and gig, and there
Mm.
was a bigger, to be honest, a bit of a mental health crisis, because
Yes.
if you're a performer and your thing is performing and you can't do that anymore, well, who
Yeah.
are you?
Yes. Yeah.
So for me, that was a really good kind of reflective time to go, yeah, but you know what? For some people, just getting up in the morning,
Yeah.
is an achievement. If you're
Yeah.
suffering from kind of mental health, then getting up, that is a huge achievement. Whereas
Yes.
for others, it's performing in front of millions of people. So
Yeah.
I think for me, I'm just driven by the reality of what an achievement is for you as an individual.
I
That
love
was a
it.
long answer. Sorry.
No, 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 don't apologize. I think it's about being individual to yourself and also knowing what you're looking for. And I think that's what I'm getting from you is don't look at other people and compare yourself to them. Focus on what's good for you and what you're trying to achieve. I love
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's hard in this industry, and especially with social media, where, I think, and when you're first starting out, you can quite easily get kind of drawn into this. Well, I need to look this way, I
yeah,
need to sound this way, and my music needs to be this way.
yeah,
And it's very hard, I think, sometimes to be, well, do you know what? Actually, I don't fit in any of those boxes. And
yeah.
that's more than fine. I'm going to celebrate the fact that I don't fit into that box and create my own box. I think we need more of that.
I do that. Yeah, I love that, Fiona. So tell us a little bit more kind of on your thoughts and feelings around equality, diversity, inclusion, especially when you're looking at kind of the jazz scene and where you're at with that. So tell us some more.
Well, as I say, this is, partly why I started up Women in Jazz Media, because
Yeah,
I mean, historically, jazz has always been white male dominated,
it has.
since its inception,
Yeah,
which is crazy when you consider where jazz came from as a music, because it
exactly.
certainly wasn't a white dominated
Yeah, right,
genre.
right.
Um, but again, back in 20s and 30s, when you think about, the rights people had, white domination was everywhere.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
and sadly, that is still the case in jazz,
Mm,
and also gender.
yeah.
And as I say, I've been working as a journalist for, oh gosh, I don't know how many years, 7 or 8 years, maybe I
Okay.
want to say.
Yeah.
Um, but most of the publications I've written for, if I've not been the only woman, there's only been maybe one other woman, or maybe one or two.
Yes.
So I've always kind of, realized that there's not many women out there. And
Yes.
then also, everyone's white.
Right.
And when I started Women in Jazz Media and really started to look at, well, is this just my impression? Is this just my
Yeah.
world, kind of where
Yeah.
I've been?
Yeah.
Is this the truth?
Yeah.
And again, not naming and shaming, but the majority of certainly UK jazz publications
Mm,
are still absolutely white male dominated.
okay. Right.
And for me, it's like, come on, it's
When,
time. It
yeah.
was time before,
Yes.
but it's certainly time now. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's still very much a kind of an issue there. And the same, not just in journalism.
Mm,
Look at sound engineers,
yeah.
look at festival lineups,
Do so.
look at photographers. So
Yeah.
it is absolutely getting better, but
Yeah.
we can't be under the illusion that it's a fair playing field at the moment. We're not
Right.
there yet.
Right. So if there was two things you could change in the next couple of years, Fiona, what would they be? What would you like to see if you could change a couple of things?
Do you know what I would like to not do?
Yeah.
Because what I do, and I can't help it, it's just what I do. If I'm scrolling on social media and I see a playlist,
Yeah.
or I see a magazine,
Yeah.
or I see an image, or the visuals that we're kind of thrown at us through social media, I can't help it, but I immediately go, why is everyone male? Or why is everyone white?
Yeah.
Or all those, why is everyone young? You
Yeah.
know, because that's the thing, when we talk about diversity, it's quite easy to just think about gender, or kind of color, or I mean
Mm,
it's everything under that. I
yeah.
would love to be able to go on social media and not question why there's a playlist picture where everyone's white, or why
Yes.
everyone's male, or
Yeah.
why everyone's young. I would like to not be able to do that. So yeah,
Yeah.
I would like to see basically everyone represented.
Yes, that's beautiful, and that's what I aim for too. And I think if we have more of these organisations and collectives working together and calling out these things as well, because I think it is about highlighting them. And I know many organisations already know this, but it's really about looking at what you're doing and what you're putting out there as well, especially on your socials, to feel included and accepted. And I think that's something that I always push for, is to have that visible representation. So yeah, I really feel you on that one.
And that's wonderful about this podcast and the episode you've done. It's kind of addressing it, because I think, and with my education hat on, you know these are not new things. We've always known these are
Yeah.
issues, but it's taking it from chatting about it, discussing it, analyzing it, to actually actioning
Action.
something.
Yeah.
And I've always been an action person.
Yeah, yeah,
um and I've spent many times discussing and debating. It's like, no, do you know, can we actually just do something?
yeah, yeah,
um but it is tricky, I think, to find that balance. A number of times I might see an image,
yeah,
and as I say, let's say it's all men, as an
yeah,
example.
yeah,
I'm so tempted to comment on Facebook, for example, and just go, why is it all men?
yeah,
Really easy to do that. And I'm not saying people shouldn't necessarily do that, but for me, it's about actively changing. It's like,
yeah,
what's the best way to get that, whoever that was who posted that, what
yeah,
is the most effective way for me to help them realize the problem with that image?
yeah,
So yeah, that's a key thing. It's about changing mindsets, and
yeah,
sometimes it's just people hadn't thought about it. I mean,
exactly.
and obviously they should have thought about it, but that's another another conversation. It's like, well, can you now think about it?
Yeah, yeah,
So yeah, that's a key thing for me.
I love that. Thank you. And do you think kind of cultural and age differences have an impact on the amount of equality and diversity work that we can do at the moment? And do you think there's a kind of resistance for change?
Yeah, yes, but also, things are changing, and I get so excited when I see someone like Judi Dench on the front cover of a magazine.
Yeah, yeah, so do I.
And I don't think everyone, I mean, women do, I
Yeah,
think, but I don't think everyone's realised how inspiring that is to see a woman of that age,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
beautiful, on
yeah,
the front cover of a magazine, because for so long it's been dominated by this kind of perceived idea of beauty, this kind
mm,
of, you know, size zero, white, tall,
yeah,
young, all these different things. So I love that we are seeing more and more what I would define as real women
yeah,
on places that I think matter,
I love
because representation is key.
it is.
Uh, and you know, whether you like it or not, magazine covers, images, we see those all the time. And I think the younger generation see that.
We
And it's
do.
important that they see
Yeah,
everything is possible.
yeah.
And I have to say, with my Women in Jazz Media hat on, because we publish 3 magazines a year, and I absolutely love choosing the front cover. And I
Okay.
take it so seriously because I genuinely think, okay, what have I not seen enough of on a front cover?
Yeah,
That's my starting point, and I'm
yeah,
thinking, well, do you know what? I haven't seen trumpet players on a, yeah, female
yeah,
trumpet player. Obviously, it's
yeah,
all
yeah,
women,
yeah,
but I'm like,
yeah,
I haven't seen enough guitarists or
yeah,
drummers, or you know.
yeah,
So I deliver, and I love that. And then I also think age. Okay, well, you know, have there been young female guitarists or maturer female guitarists? So,
yeah,
and I love that because I just think that the front cover, that visual, is
yeah,
so important, because if you see it, then I
yes.
think that helps you believe it can happen. So I'm
Right.
very passionate about that.
I love that. It inspires you, doesn't it? And it kind of gives you that sense of role models. And you can, when you see someone, you can aspire to be like them, and you could think that there is a place for you in that
Mm,
industry, whatever you want to be. And I think that's really important. Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
It really is important. It's essential.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of Fiona, working in the music industry all this time, has it affected your mental health at all?
Oh God, yeah, I'm completely crazy.
How do you think that?
Well, but I think on, you know, and I often explore this, and one day, I would love to actually write a book about the kind of the creative mindset, because it is fascinating.
Yeah,
And I spend some time speaking to people who don't work in the creative industries,
yeah,
and they do perceive kind of so-called creatives as crazy, like I'm the kind of the crazy
yeah,
theatrical one.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whereas in my world, no, I'm not. I'm the same as everybody,
Yeah,
same as
yeah, yeah.
everybody
I know
else.
that feeling.
You know, so that's, I think, really interesting. But also, you know, if you're a creator as a writer,
Yes.
then, you know, many of us, we will have those moments at like 3 in the morning when I
Yeah,
wake up with an idea,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I lie there thinking, shall I get up and actually just go and
Yeah.
write that, or shall I go back to sleep, and that kind of debate. So, you know, there is kind of, you know, a kind of a kind of I don't know if it's weird, but an interesting kind of mindset of a
Yeah,
creative.
yeah,
Um, but because I think, you know, you are in touch with your emotions in a
yeah,
different way.
yes,
You know, that's not to say if you're not a so-called creative that you're not in touch with your emotions, but I think it's a different way, because the way, if you create, let's say, whether that's dance or theater, you know, you connect with emotions in a different
motion.
way.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, you know, and therefore I think, you know, that you leave yourself vulnerable, and
yeah,
you leave yourself open,
yes,
and ultimately insecure. And I think I don't know any person who works in the creative industry who doesn't suffer from insecurity
yeah,
and
yeah.
not feeling good enough.
Imposter
And
syndrome.
and I
Yeah.
have never felt good enough in
No,
my life.
same actually.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's also important not to compare yourself to other people as well, because you can look around you and think, well, this person's doing really well and this person's doing really well. But again, you don't know all the hard work they're putting into it. You don't know what goes on behind the scenes. And it might look good, but it doesn't always mean it is great. You know what I'm saying? So
Absolutely. And this is why, going back to what I said earlier about achievements, is
yeah,
it's, yeah, when you have those moments of insecurity, and look, and this is just my thoughts, as you know,
yeah,
not to say that
nice
I know what
work.
I'm talking about, but for me, it's like when you have those moments of, you know, well, this isn't good enough, or you know, is to just think about, oh, well, hang on a sec, what is actually achievement? And I
Yeah,
say, you know, writing a song, even if you never play that song to anybody else,
yeah,
you know, actually writing that, there are people across the world who would kill to be able to have the skills to write a song. So
Yeah,
yes, I think, yeah, that help keeps me checked with kind of reality is actually, well, you know, actually what have I achieved?
that's
You know,
beautiful.
so yeah, that's what I try and do.
I love that. And when we're coming back to the jazz and women in jazz as well, let's come back to that. It's like
Mm,
kind of looking at discrimination and stigma. Do you
mm.
think a lot of that still exists today? And if so, what can we do to prevent this from happening?
I wish I could say it didn't,
Yeah,
but almost on a daily basis, I will
right.
have a conversation or get a text. And as I say, because of my work, it is always from
Yeah,
women. I'm
yeah,
sure men, you know, suffer in some way.
yeah,
I'm just not experienced in that, certainly in that detail.
yeah,
But I tell you, a common thing I get, and almost going back to what I mentioned about singers, is
yeah.
if a woman walks into a gig, the presumption is she's a singer.
Yeah, okay, right.
Right?
Yeah,
So, and they're treated in a certain way.
yeah,
And what I have is women who are saxophonists or women
yeah,
who are drummers. It's like,
yeah.
well, no, actually, I'm the drummer,
Or managers,
actually.
you know,
Yeah.
even yeah,
Yeah, but there was a kind of a lovely moment I had a couple of years ago. So we put on some events at the London Jazz Festival,
lovely.
and what we try and do is incorporate not just female performers,
Yes,
but platforming instrumentalists, but also female photographers, sound
lovely.
engineers to really kind of have a strong female presence. And
Yes,
we had a gig, and a guy in the audience came up to me afterwards, and he said, "Oh," he said, "You got a female sound engineer."
yeah.
And I said, "Oh, yes, we do." He said, "I didn't know women did that."
Wow.
I
Okay.
know, and I was quite surprised, but I just looked at him and I said, "Well, you do now.
It's
Spread
those
the word."
stereotypes, isn't it? This is another thing, we have stereotypes in gender roles, and I think this is
Yes,
another thing, especially in the music industry, whereas it's very male dominated and people automatically think, "Oh, they must be male, so they're this way. If you're female, you must be either a dancer or a singer," which is
yes,
totally unacceptable, and it's not okay for this
yeah.
day, really.
It is, but part of the problem with that, as I say, is because, you know, and I go to many, many gigs and say primarily jazz, but I
Yeah,
go to many, many gigs. I could literally count the number of female sound engineers I've seen,
yeah,
like easily. I could
yeah,
easily count them. To say, you know, so until we see that fairer picture, yeah, because when you see it, it's like this guy, he was like,
yeah,
oh my God, a female sound engineer. So it's
yeah,
rare, and
yeah,
it needs to not be rare.
yeah,
So I think, and I think quite often, and I have this, and you know, for example, my musicians that I work with, and I cannot begin to tell you how much I love the musicians I work with. But they are, I have a female backing singer,
yes,
but the rest of my musicians are male.
right,
And obviously with my Women in Jazz Media hat on, I kind of, you know, I quite often think about this.
yeah,
And I'm sure my saxophonist, Laura, won't mind me saying this. He said to me, he said, "Look, Fee, if you need to replace me with a woman, I understand." And
oh,
I know. And I was like, oh, and this is the thing. It's like,
that's
not going to replace people just for the sake
yeah,
of it.
yeah,
So
yeah,
what I do, because as I say, I love my musicians, I have no intention of replacing anyone with a
yeah, yeah,
woman,
yeah,
but I bring guests in. So when I have a
lovely.
gig, I will bring in female guests.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
know, so where possible, when I'm adding, and also if someone can't make it, then yes, I will think, do you know what? I'm going to get a
yeah,
female musician so
yeah,
that it is equal. So sometimes it's just thinking about, you know, that and looking a bit farther. And I think that's another issue. And quite often I will get emailed by men
yeah,
saying, oh, you know, we need a drummer. Can you recommend some female drummers?
yeah,
And it's like, I absolutely can. And I will quite
yeah,
happily send them a list with loads and loads. But it's interesting because it's like they obviously don't know many female drummers,
yeah,
the fact
yeah,
that they're coming to me and asking. So again, it's about representation, the visual of, you know, and I spend a lot of time posting all over social media, just pictures, for example, of female drummers. It's like, look,
yeah,
yep, they're out there.
yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, I think seeing it
yeah.
is really important.
And I think you've also mentioned we've got an infrastructure issue where people don't know where to look for female jazz players or jazz musicians. Sorry. So, you know, if people do want to look for jazz musicians and they want to look for your organization, do you have any links where people can follow you?
Oh, well, absolutely. But I must give a little shout out actually, because you mentioned
Yeah.
about finding musicians, that there are loads of wonderful organizations out there that
Yes.
really start to network and kind of build databases of female musicians.
Yeah.
And when you mentioned that, the F list
Yeah.
sprang into my mind, because there's a fantastic organization and they do actually have a database of female
Yes.
musicians.
Yeah.
Um, and on our website, which is just womeninjazzmedia.com,
Yeah.
and we're everywhere. We're on all social media platforms. And we do have partners, and we spend all our time sharing all the other great communities, the great organizations.
Yes.
Because as I say, we're not for profit. This is not about us at all.
Yeah.
This is about we're all in this
Yeah.
together. So yes, womeninjazzmedia.com is the easiest thing.
So that's the F list. Shout out to the F list because
Yes.
they're fantastic. So yeah, the F list and women in jazz media. So do you have any socials that people can follow you on, Fiona?
Yeah, what for me? Well, for me, and I've got there's my artist page,
Yes.
which is just so if you type in Fiona Ross in Google,
Yeah.
my website comes up, which is just fionaross.co.uk, because I have kind of Instagram journalism, Instagram artist, Facebook, so I'm everywhere. So yeah, fionaross.co.uk is the easiest thing for
And
me.
does Women in Jazz Media have their own website as well that people
We
can?
do, yep, yep. We have our website, and or if you know, and I say Instagram, Facebook, whatever was formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah.
But yeah, so womeninjazzmedia.com, and
Yeah.
then yeah,
I'll
fionaross.co.uk.
leave all that in the description below. Thank you, Fiona. And before we go, is there any major wins or successes that you'd like to share with us?
Oh gosh. Oh, I love that question, but I'm also kind of having talked about achievement, I talked about achievements.
Yeah.
Um, well, do you know what? I think I I I tell you what sticks in my mind recently. And this probably sounds a bit cheesy, but it's true.
Yeah.
Talking about what I was saying about the community, I had a woman, I won't say who it is, but a woman at a gig that we had in November,
Yes.
and she came up to me at the end of the night, and she said to me, "Thank you," and I was like, "Oh yeah, no worries," and she said, "No, no, thank you for making me seen." She said, I've been working for years. You make me feel seen."
Oh,
Yeah, and for me, that is an achievement,
yes.
because that was a really powerful thing to say, that this woman, who's
Yeah.
amazing, and it
Yeah.
hadn't even occurred to me that she felt that way at all, but she said, "Thank you for making me feel seen." So that, I think that's an achievement.
Oh, I love that. What a lovely way to end the podcast. Thank you so much, Fiona. Thank you again for taking the time out and for sharing your story. It's been absolutely inspirational. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, a guest. And honestly, the work you do is wonderful. So you're just as inspirational. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'll speak to you again soon. Take care.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you.
you.